Hi sweeties, how are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim. If this is your first time of coming across this channel, sweetheart, kindly smash that subscribe button, turn your notifications so you are notified each time I upload, and please give this video a thumb up. I appreciate you all so much, and I am saying massive shout out to every one of you for the support, the love you all shower me here with. I am grateful, and you all are super sweet. So today we'll be talking something very important, and it's about an Asian brand. It's actually a makeup brand who actually launched their makeup brand, and they included black people as models, but black people found out that they do not have black brands for black people. And it happened that the brands, like the colors they put on their to showcase their brand does not also match what the black models they have. And black people started raising awareness and started calling them out for what they did. I think it's fraud. This is what I think. Because how do you sell something that does not include people that look like me? You don't have their color and all that, but you put them all out for the business. And they came out to say that yes, they are extending their product and all that they are also going to get black shades and all that. Then why did you use black people, black models and all that? They are wearing wrong shades from what you advertise. And now let me tell you something. These people already, Asian stores already know that their biggest customers are black people. They know. And this is one of the reasons why I keep saying patronize a black brand, black businesses. That's why you see them, they occupy everywhere, they are everywhere in black community. And at the same time, disrespecting black people. These are the people you are supposed to spend your money with. But then they lie about what the products they have because they want people to think like they are including black people when they did not. I am rolling this clip. We'll come back to talk about it. Let me know what you all think in the comments. So straight up, let's get into it.
Announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation. In a lore article dated back in September, I told them at our launch event that I planned on extending the shades soon. After launching my fair share of flops, it was always my intention to launch this as a proof of concept, see if people even liked the base formula, figure out if the entire project is such a flop that we have to start over and everything that we've ordered just goes into landfill, or we can kind of extend and expand. So working on shades and shade development, I've actually been working on some of this before we launched the foundation, but I always wanted to make sure that I left some room where I can actually take direct feedback. I love it when you guys send me feedback, especially videos, visuals. It's just super helpful for me. All of that ends up going into a really big document. Then it goes back to the lab. Then we do a lot of in-person shade development to make any other adjustments. So additional shades are coming. There's something that I've been actively working on before we launched our foundation. Shade development does take time. Sometimes there's some nuances with time of the year that we are developing shades. So for example, summer shades look different than winter shades, especially if you're someone who changes undertones as you get a little bit more tan. These are all kind of things that we're working through. It's always my intention to launch this as a proof of concept, see if people even liked the base form.
I mean, obviously, this apology is fake. But what blows me about, like, companies like this is that black people are some of the loyalist consumers you will ever have. There are products that my mother has been using since before I was born that are still in my bathroom cabinet. You're a Colgate household, that's it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, my mom is not just going to show up and buy a different brand or something just because what we usually get is out, you know? And the fact that companies don't even see black people as, like, valuable enough to market to is crazy to me. Because if you can hook one black mother on your product, do you know you have generations of consumers? Y'all want to hear that, though. Be racist. Be racist, please.
Announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation. In a lore article,
I've been seeing this video on my For You page all day, and I wasn't really interested in hearing what it was about until one of my mutuals, I saw one of my mutuals stitch it, and I was like, well, what is the video about? And it was about you talking about how you created a foundation brand, but you're not shade inclusive, but you plan on extend. Why did you send PR packages to dark-skinned women who were not within your shade range? What was the reason? What was the reason for that? I guess that's what I'm really concerned about. Was it to induce rage marketing? Because you knew, or I would assume that whoever is working in your marketing team knew that the influencers that they were sending foundations to didn't match any of them, and they all have very deep skin tones. But I personally, truthfully, honest to God, I've never, hoped, like if somebody starts a business, like they don't do well, but maybe you should find something else to do. This was so tone deaf and mean spirited and just god awful. It seemed like you were using Black women as a pawn, because that's what people do in marketing. They hope to like enrage Black people, because that's how you get people's attention, is enraging Black people. And that's what it seems like you just did. Like, think about it. Anytime somebody really wants to enrage Black people, think about the Kardashians. They do that in order to, gain traction, gain attention and whatnot. Many people do it. But you doing that, you're I don't know who's in charge of your marketing, but sending foundations that don't match Black girls out to multiple Black girls is I can't even think of the fucking word. The only word that comes to mind is like violent, but I don't think that that's like the correct word, but that's how this feels. It just feels so violently mean. And honestly, you just had a whole video saying a bunch of stuff instead of what you should have said, which was, I'm sorry. That's all you should have said. You didn't need to explain any of this other stuff, because honestly, it just sounded like white noise. I'm sorry. My bad.
Announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation. In a lore article,
I don't know, it's 2023, and if you're a makeup brand and you have to make apology video, not stalking a certain shade, I don't know. Don't call yourself a makeup brand. Because it's not that hard for you to fathom that Black people exist. Black people come in different shades, from darkest to lightest. And if your foundation line is not ready, just don't release it. What is the point of releasing your foundation range if it's not available for the whole consumer market for it to be used? If that's your agenda, you're only looking at the specific group of people, not the makeup industry, the consumers within the makeup industry market. Let's be honest, I've never heard of this brand. It's because a creator made a video about how their darkest shade look like a concealer, not even a concealer, so light, and the way they promoted it on their page, they had someone that was dark skinned. In reality, the shade of the actual product itself looked so light. If you have a makeup brand releasing foundation, you know damn well that the foundation that you're releasing is not ready. Just don't release it.
announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation. In a lore article,
Hey baddies, you guys can go watch that if you want. However, all I have to say is personally me, but essentially what she was saying is that people with darker complexions were a complete afterthought to her. She literally said whenever she launched her foundation, right, she announced that she was going to extend her shade range on the day that she launched this foundation. Personally, I just think that if you're gonna launch a complexion product, launch every single shade the first time, or just don't launch the product at all. I think her overall response told me everything I needed to know about this brand. But at the end of the day, the beauty industry has proved time and time again that dark-skinned women are the afterthought. A lot of these beauty brands do not come out with our shades on the first try because they don't want to be inclusive. Okay, I'm not trying to be inclusive. And that's okay, Pookie. That's really okay. There are a lot of other brands that I talk about on here, House Labs, Fenty Beauty, and all of those brands on the first try have come out with products for people with darker complexions. So take her response as you will, but true inclusivity goes far beyond, oh, I'm gonna launch the product now and release the darker shades later. No.
launch this as a proof of concept, see if people even liked the base formula, figure out if the entire
I feel like my biggest concern whenever something like this happens, and not just speaking to this brand, but any brand who comes out with complexion products, is who are you testing these deepest shades on? Or at least a little thought process behind shade making, because I would love to know how that goes. Now, speaking directly to this stitch, I just feel like coming out with a limited range of shades to get a crowd's reactions before launching more shades is a little concerning, especially considering the fact that only a certain group of people can really test these shades out. I've read so many comments on videos lately of people kind of defending brands for not being inclusive. Like, they'll be like, Well, coming out with a range of 40 to 60 foundation shades is really expensive, so it's like not easy to do all at once. Or coming out with deeper shades is kind of hard because like making deep shades isn't easy. As concerning as those comments are, it's really hard not to laugh at people's like thought processes behind defending these brands. I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you are a brand launching complexion products, if there isn't a shade for everyone, just save yourselves the embarrassment, the hassle. Just don't come out with a launch unless there's something for everyone. I just feel like if Fenty can do it, or Rare Beauty, or House Labs, or NARS, it's really, really hard to imagine it being that difficult.
Announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation. In a Lore article,
as a makeup content creator, one of the things that I find to be the most funny about this whole shade range, the Pe0ple, the launching of this foundation is you spent money on frosted glass for the bottles of the foundation, right? You spent money on a very expensive formula, or so you say. But where you draw the line was increasing the shade range slightly. I'm going to show you a screenshot of what the rest of the shade range looks like. This is a screenshot directly from their website. You have only 1, 2, 3.5-ish shades. 3 shades that will fit a black person. There's 15 shades. The first 10 shades look smack alike. Maybe different undertones. They look smack alike. You could have not spaced this ones out so much and spaced out the black ones and the middle ranges or whatever. You could have come out with 4 shades of foundation, right? And it would have had more shade diversity than this. There's only 3 shades that could fit a black person in here. That is 1/5 of how many foundation shades you have, while almost 10 of them were marketed towards non-black people. And don't get me started on the photoshopping of the models. Look at the model up here. Look at this model up here. How on God's green earth is that foundation this person's shade? That person is so much darker than the foundation that you claim that he's wearing or they are wearing. If you are a small business, you're just on the come up, stick to the eyeshadows, the eyeliners, the brow products. Stick to stuff that you can make a deplorable shade range for and not get dragged. Stick to the basics. When you have enough funding, keep the foundation launch under wraps until you have enough funding to actually make foundations that make sense. Fenty has 50 shades of foundation. Why do you have 15? And to have the absolute gall, the audacity to send out this deplorable shade range to black creators that are obviously darker than the darkest shade range is disrespectful. It is disrespectful. I am not having it. It's disrespectful. Because if you're going to spend that much on a foundation formula, at least let it be inclusive. And then the gall to say it is going to be an extended range at some point. So black people are an afterthought. Darker skinned people are an afterthought. Even with this 15, you could have spread it out more. I promise you could have spread it out more. This is crazy. This is deplorable. And it is an ongoing trend among brands to Photoshop the picture that they put on the website. It is hard enough as black women, as dark-skinned people, to find your shade, but then having companies Photoshop their foundations to be darker, their concealers to be darker, their brow products to be darker or lighter on the website makes it so much more deplorable and so much more annoying, because now it's so much harder to find your shade because you think you're a 24N because 24N looks like your shade on the website. You get it back home and it's looking more like a 140N. I am tired of this BS. It is 2020 flipping 3. Put on your boots, get on your Zoom, and stop acting a fool. I'm tired. Lastly, this, as the response from the brand founder, is deplorable. It doesn't taste right. It doesn't make any sense. As the brand founder, this is your big reply. Embarrassing.
Announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation. In a Lore article,
Okay, I had to jump in on this conversation as the founder and CEO of a beauty company. I've been seeing so many people stitch this woman's video, upset about the limited range of her product, her foundation, and upset that she says in this video, I was always going to do more. I was always going to launch deeper shades just, later. And a lot of people have taken that to mean she doesn't care about Black people. She doesn't care about women of color. I can't speak to that because I don't know this person. I can speak to some of the things that have come up as a result of this conversation as a beauty founder. By the way, my company is called Minted Cosmetics. These are our foundations. Here you can see on the left, we have 16 shades from L10 to D40. So that's my shade range for reference, but let me just get into a few points. Number one, I'm seeing a lot of people say if you don't have the funding to launch a fully inclusive shade range, you just shouldn't launch anything at all. I personally don't agree with that sentiment because the thing is, there's so many shades on this planet. There's so many shades. New shades are invented every day. Every time two people of different skin tones come together and have a baby, okay? So no brand can cover every shade, right? Even Fenty's 50 Shades does not perfectly match every single skin tone on the planet. Okay, so that means every brand, the big conglomerates like L'Oreal, the indie brands like Minted, every brand is going to have to decide how broad the shade range is and how many complexions they're covering and make a decision about that. So saying don't launch if you can't cover every single person, I mean, that just isn't realistic. That said, and I want to be clear about this, where you do decide to focus your shade range, that is intentional. You have choice around that as a founder. Now look at mine again. I think it's very clear if you look at that photo where I'm focusing my 16 shades. I never thought with 16 shades I'd be able to cover the whole spectrum of the planet. But I wanted to focus on the shades that I personally felt were left behind and neglected, which is why I have so many shades in that M and 40. Okay? If you look at Euphoria, if you look at her complexion launch, I think between my M10 and her D40, I think maybe she had 2 shades where I have 8, right? So it's very clear her focus where she has something like 10 shades even before you get to my lightest shade, which is L10. And my lightest shade is not fair, okay? She has something like 10 shades before you even get there. So it's very clear my focus was on medium, deep skin tones. Her focus was on fair skin tones. And that's a choice she made. And I think people have every right to be upset about that choice, given how many brands have so many shades in that range. But it is a choice she made, just like the choice I made was to focus more on medium, deep skin tones. I didn't try to hit everybody because I knew that I could not. And the third thing I want to just touch on is the reason why brands are so limited in how many shades they can create. There is just something you have to think about, which is manufacturing and minimum order quantities. Most manufacturers, their minimum order quantity per shade is 5,000 units. Some have more like 10,000, 15,000 unit minimum order quantities, but most 5,000. So that means every single shade you have to order 5,000 units of, even if you know it's not going to sell that well. Now, the truth for me is this: D30 and D40, my deepest shades, sell the slowest, the absolute slowest of all of my shades. But when I place a reorder for those, I have to order minimum 5,000, just like I have to order minimum 5,000 of M10, which is my number one selling shade. So that puts a real financial strain on me. I do it. It matters to me. I do it. But the truth of the matter is, small batch manufacturing is such an opportunity. If there were more manufacturers offering small batch manufacturing opportunities for brands, I think all of us would have bigger shade ranges, because we could say, all right, I'm going to order 5,000 of my top shade and I'm going to order 500 of my least selling shade because I still want to offer it, but I can't afford to put that many resources into it, knowing that it's going to sit and potentially it's going to hit the end of its shelf life before I've even sold through it all. That is just the business reality. So I'm not trying to stick up for this woman. I don't know her. I'm not trying to stick up for her brand. I don't know the brand. I haven't tried it. I'm just explaining some of the things that when you are an indie brand that you do have to think about. You do have to be really intentional when you're going to launch a complexion line, because you know you're not going to be able to hit everyone, and it matters what you're focusing on. For me, I decided to focus on the shades left behind. I don't think this founder did that, and I think it's right for people to call that out and express their opinions on it. But I do just also want to offer a little bit more context.
announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation. In a lore article,
I'll say the quiet part out loud every time, and y'all think it eats, and it doesn't every time. Tell me that black people are afterthought to you without telling me that black people are afterthought to you. The way that she has marketed that, let me show you. As soon as you go on their website, look at that lady all the way in the corner. She's there to show representation, but she couldn't even find her foundation shade. And yet she's in the advertising photo. I have the nerve to have a see it on skin like yours section. And people who have these skin complexions cannot use that foundation. Oh my gosh. And then you have a black girl as the tutorial header? Are we being serious? Before I dive into the review section, I just would like to note that there are no black people reviewing this foundation. But even white people are struggling to shade match themselves. Stop lying to black girls about inclusivity. It's not worth
this as a proof of concept. See if people even liked the base formula. Figure out if the entire project is such.
So for people who don't understand why she's saying all this, in the tech world, it's become very normalized to release a product with errors because they could patch it afterwards. And consumers have become so accustomed to and have become complacent to it that these companies expect errors in their first release of product. But while that might be the case for the tech world, in terms of makeup, that is not an error that should ever occur in the first place. No one should release a product with the forethought of, we could fix this when we're talking about catering to different skin tones, acknowledging that people exist. I feel like we shouldn't support a brand even after they fix the problem because it sets up this precedence like how it is in the tech industry right now. Not acknowledging and catering to a group of people who are systematically marginalized is not an oopsie. It is not an error that could be fixed. That's a very big indictment of your character flaw.
Announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation.
So I think videos like this are super interesting because they teach us that as black people, we really need to use our discernment and not give free marketing, whether it's good or bad, to brands that just do not care about us. Like, I think it's super wild that she would admit that she just didn't intend to include black people in the first run of this foundation. But I feel like when people show you who they are or what their brand is about, you need to believe them. I really wanted to support this brand, but I think it's so telling that she feels comfortable letting us know that the first run of this never was meant to include any sort of inclusive shade range. And just for that reason, I think we need to stop with all the videos. Like, even me making this video right now, we need to stop with all the videos running up that woman's just marketing right now. Because I mean, we also have already seen what this did to Tarte. Like, sure, bad press, but that brand was truly like almost dead. I did not hear people talk about Tarte for years, and now it's back and well. And I think that we need to understand that as black consumers, we have a lot of power and we should use that power wisely. Telling people not to buy this foundation is definitely helpful, but I think that in general, what we're doing is drawing attention to brands that truly did not have that level of attention before. So yeah, these are just my 2 cents. At the end of the day, as somebody who's currently formulating a beauty product, albeit it's not a makeup product or skincare, I know that it can be quite difficult. I think that it's just complete BS that she's formulating for winter and summer shades. Like, I guarantee y'all, every month of the year, I look a shade very similar to this. So the fact that she has people who've made their whole pages about tone inclusivity, calling her out like this, I think that at the end of the day, it's very much calculated. She decided that bad press was better than no press, in my opinion. And that's really unfortunate because I really wanted to support this founder. But hey, we live and we learn.
Announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation. In a lore article,
the fact that this brand owner has used the excuse of I've always planned on extending the shade range is actually worse, because you planned on extending this shade range and then you still launched your brand with only shades that work for white people. Like, literally, even the brown shades are like beige. Like, it simply does not make sense. And if you are only going to launch, I get small businesses, I get small brands not having money, but if you're gonna launch 15 shades, those 15 shades better work for the lightest of light people and the darkest of dark people, because otherwise you were just saying that Black people are an afterthought to you, and it does not matter if your product doesn't work for them, because don't worry, a few years down the line, you will have a product that works for them. It's giving Tarte 2015. And if you didn't learn from that, you probably honestly shouldn't be a brand developer or creator or anything, because this is just not the PR that you wanted, bestie.
Announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation.
Oh my goodness, it's not just a range inclusivity problem, it's literally also a false advertising problem. These two shades right here, wait, you can't really see my finger, but shades 495 and 450, they don't actually exist currently in your foundation range, yet you have it prominently on your website and on all your branding. And not only that, but you also sent it to dark-skinned influencers. In what version of reality does those two shades, like, basically the foundations in the bottle differ completely from the color that's even on the packaging. Like, so it's criminally insane, it's criminal insanity that somebody was packaging the product, saw the color that's supposed to be in the bottle, and saw the bottle and said, yes, this makes sense. Like, those two colors in actuality, like in the bottle, are closer to my shade, and I'm always in the deep medium whenever people have 40+ shades. Let's use sense.
Announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation. In a lore article,
It's always so intriguing to me to see, CEOs, the tops of these companies, like, double down, triple down when someone, like, makes, like, a bad review of the product, and it's like, this shade is supposed to look like this. The box looks completely different than what the shade actually looks like on the skin, and they're like, okay, this just isn't for me. Then we have the people actually being like, well, I want to expand the shade range, and I always wanted to. First of all, you have 10 beige shades. How do y'all always have 10 beige and tan shades, but not any for darker skin tones? Third, I'm really getting tired of people talking about we want to do this and this testing and expanding. The beauty market is saturated, oversaturated with so many products from so many companies of people that are actually getting foundation and shades right off the bat. This is not eyeshadow. This is not lip gloss. Y'all need to come correct with the full shade range, period.
Announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation.
What I find to be actually like insidious about when brands do things like this is they try to gloss over all the deceptive marketing tactics that they did right before this, as if, one, you did not actually release shades online that technically look different than what they look like in person. They look significantly, the few dark shades you have look significantly darker online than they do in person. And we saw it from Glorilla's attempt at trying to utilize some of your darker shades. Not only is there barely enough shades for people on a medium to darker skin tone to use, because there really isn't, we are all very aware of that, but your darkest shades are actually not the same shade that you advertise them to be. So you still try to make it look like you were being inclusive, even though you knew from jump that you were not thinking of that. And it's also very clear who the key target market is, because if everything is 50 shades of the lightest possible thing you can think of, then what you're saying from the beginning is this market is not supposed to include those folks. We if this tests well, if X, Y, and Z, if we absolutely have to, we're gonna go there. But that is not where we're focused on. That's not what we're putting our development dollars on. That's not even who we're gonna even test for, especially when she speaks about, trying to make sure that it's really the right product and all that things. If you're not testing on certain skin tones, skin types, X, Y, and Z, then you're not marketing for them. Like, why would you market for something you never tested for? Like, let's be adults and honest about things. Like, which is why I bring it back to, it's an insidious, like, deceptive marketing tactic that honestly, like, you either need to own and say, hey, that is not our key target audience. That's not who we plan on marketing for. That is not a set of people that we have in mind. And then keep it pushing, because there are brands who do that comfortably. Brands who for years have been very clear that they have no desire to be inclusive and that their target market is a certain, shade range, and that's it. And like, you could do that. But instead of just, standing in that, you now want to act as if like you did have some thoughts and afterthoughts and, potential, like, I'm just saying, we could be adults and we can be honest about what we really feel, because I promise you, there are people who are still going to buy your products anyway. So just walk in your truth.
Announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation.
Let me tell y'all, I've been doing this for about 8 years now, and it still baffles me that in the year 2023, brands still think telling people that a demographic's pretty much an afterthought is good PR. Like, at this point, you just gotta own not being inclusive. Like, you gotta be, okay, yeah, and I launched the shades that I wanted to launch. There are brands that stand on it, it works for them and their target audience, but it almost never works out for y'all when you try to talk yourselves out of it, because it almost never makes sense when you try to talk yourselves out of it. You guys do not know, basically that brand launched a product and it did not have a good shade range, so the owner got up on here trying to explain it, and she said that she launched the product and said at the time of launch that she has the intention to expand the shade range later. And basically how she explains it in that video is that she launched it the way that she launched it, kind of like an experiment to see if people would even like the product, to continue putting, thought and money into it, if people would like the shade ranges, how people would react to the undertones, all that stuff. And my thing about that explanation is, if you didn't include darker shades in the initial experiment launch, what feedback are you going to get from this initial launch to help you create those darker shades? I'm just saying, if you launching it to see how people react to the shades and all that stuff, but you don't include a certain shade range in that initial launch, what feedback are you going to take from that initial launch to create those darker shades? Because if you didn't need them in the initial launch to create that shade extension, then you could have included them in the initial launch, right? You could have had a nice little gradient, even if it's still small, to get that experiment, but they weren't included. So what is going to be different moving forward to extend that shade? And that's why it's just, it always baffles me when people are like, well, darker shades don't spend the same, so brands aren't going to waste making that product because people aren't going to buy it. And my answer is always, how are people going to buy something that doesn't exist? What numbers are you going off of to prove how much they have interest in your product if your product doesn't have a version that they can purchase? But you know what? You got it.
Announced that we were going to extend our shades of foundation on the day that I launched our foundation. In a lore article, announced that we were.
So this is all I got from the stitches, and I don't really like, where am I supposed to start from right now? But then I am going to say this. I mean, I think it's time we start doing us, especially Black people, because it looks like these people already know that, I mean, we cannot, not like we cannot do without them, like, they know that they when it comes to beauty and all that, like, beauty stores and all that, Black people are always out there to, like, buy from them and the rest of it. And so for that reason, they feel like, we can do anything to get our Black customers back in, like, take their money and all that, even while lying too, because you all can see that they lied about the product they have. And also, why did they send different shades? I mean, like shade that doesn't even fit the Black like the Black models they use. Like, I feel the whole thing is just a mess, because why do you have to lie about the color the models are wearing? And why is it that you do not have a lot of a foundation for Black people, yet you still included Black people in that same business, because they already know that Black people are huge, like they are huge when it comes to their business. I mean, they are mostly the ones buying, because also they have their stores all over Black community, so they already know that, I mean, no matter what we do, we need to include them, no matter how little it is. But then how do you open a brand or open a foundation where you did not also include Black people, but you have models, Black models, modeling that? Don't you think you are a liar? Or don't you think you're trying to use them? And one thing I noticed about Black people is that when if you are able to do something right and get it right, especially when it comes to cosmetics and all that, like one of the sisters said, I mean, if a Black person is your customer, I mean, like, they are usually very loyal customers, anytime, any day. But with everything that I am saying, like I keep saying, man, see, we're spending a lot. Black people are spending a lot of money in Asian community, like Asian stores, Asian beauty stores. I think it is right time we spend that money we spend with them, with Black business owners. Go to Black stores where they have these things, buy from them, instead of them using that as pawns and also turn against us and all that. So I think we can do it. Buy from a Black business. Patronize a Black brand. This is how we can get, like, you know, clear all this mess. Because if not, they will still look for a way, because they know how important you are to their business. When you are not ready to open a brand, or you are not include everybody, do not open it. This is where I am going to draw the curtain. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.